Good morning. Here we are on this bright and sunny day. Well, except it's not bright and it's not sunny, but at least I have a cup of tea. That's the main thing. Good morning, good morning. I've popped together one or two resources that may or may not help as we go through. Good morning, all. Well, at least I worked out how to use the software first thing this morning. I'll just close this door. So how is everyone this morning? Not really sure what the protocol is for these things. I'm used to standing up in front of classrooms full of people, but this is kind of different. Looking forward to it. Hopefully it'll be fun. I'm bright-eyed and bushy-tailed this morning. Thanks for asking, as ever. I'm continually told off most mornings at work that I'm too cheerful. I don't let it get to me too much, but I think it makes me a little bit more cheerful, which seems to annoy those around me. But I have a cup of tea in my hand and some files around me to help answer any questions that anybody might have, to the best of my knowledge, and raring to go. Well, I think we're still a little ahead of the start time. Well, that's extremely kind of you to say so. I know some pretty cool driving instructors. There's some good guys and gals out there. And I'm not sure I've ever been described as cool. So thank you very much. So what I'm hoping to do today is look at perhaps standards check for ADIs, because it's a little different. The standard is applied a little differently. For those who don't know, and there may well be learners tuning in for this, your instructor had to qualify according to a specific set of standards. Once they've qualified, they're periodically assessed by the Driving and Vehicle Standards Agency to make sure that they're fit to still be on the register of driving instructors. But the standard they're going to be assessed on has changed. It changed in 2014, but it's still, when you're busy trying to earn a living, it's sometimes difficult to catch up and find the time to find out what this standards check's all about. The reason I wanted to do this today is I run workshops for standards check, and I've had 451 people through that workshop, and we've had 2 who failed and came back, retrained and passed, and 84% of the rest got A's. So we're fairly much on the money. How much does the driving school charge? Well, it depends on where you live. All driving instructors are different, so it's a case of seeking out who there is in your area and finding out the price. The school that I work for, Learner Driving Centres, we charge anywhere from £20 per hour to £35 an hour. It just depends on the location. Cost of living is different in different areas, and some areas dictate a higher price. That's just market forces, I suppose. So today it's all really about trying to answer questions to the best of my ability, really. Whatever they may be, I'll always try and answer. If I haven't got the answer, what I normally do is I'll let you know that, and find the answer and come back to you. Well, I've been in the game quite a while now, 28 years in fact. So I've seen lots of stuff, and I've helped people find answers to questions throughout those times. Morning, Dean. Just finishing my morning mug of tea. So there's no planned sort of end time for this. We'll just obviously we'll give people time to get on board and go through it as best we can. In future videos, when I do them, and I intend doing a few more, I'll perhaps schedule the live stream, fairly well in advance, say 7 days ahead, and make them on specific topics, and perhaps even I'm not sure if I can find a way of doing that. Perhaps even just people emailing me questions in, and then finding answers for the next session. I'm not really sure. So I had 28 years, so that's 56 years between us, Dean. Wow, aren't we old? So you're still in it after 28 years, Dean? Still find it as exciting, or has it become mundane? I count myself as very fortunate. I've never lost my enthusiasm for the job. I think it's because it's a great job, but I've constantly moved, always trying to learn new things and listen to what's happening around. You love it, brilliant, great to hear, Dean. Great to hear. It's how are you finding the? Have you had a standards check yet? How are you finding the changes? Do you use coaching or client-centered techniques for your learners? Morning, James. An odd format this is. It's. I think I quite like it. I'm not 100% sure, but I'm fairly sure I quite like it. It is a little strange with the delay, but I'm sure I'll get used to that. So how is the weather where everybody is? It's a little cold and damp here. I had planned on taking the motorbike out for a ride this afternoon, but maybe not. It's not the riding of it, it's the cleaning and drying and putting away that's the thing. Okay, Dean, so grade 6 4 times on a trot. Clearly know what you're doing. It's really, I think the key thing is that the guys who are from grade 5 and grade 6 are the ones who are involving the pupil in the lesson anyway. Otherwise you really wouldn't get that high a score. So it's very similar stuff, but it's just there's some fairly basic things that they want. And the feedback I'm getting is that the standard is being applied slightly different, or not differently, that's not the right way to explain it, but it depends on the examiner's bias. If the examiner is really fully into client-centered learning and understands it particularly well, they're coming at it from a different angle to an examiner, say, who still believed that the core comps was the way to go. So they're just sort of tipping a nod to client-centered. But it's about finding an approach that can make sure that gets you the end result. Hi James, part 3. 5 things would be best to work on. I don't know if there's a way of saying there's this followed by this followed by this followed by this. The only thing that matters on your part 3 is your core comps. That's all they're interested in. So I would say that it's making sure that you've done that. The briefing is not as important as you think it is. I think there's a tendency as trainees coming up to Part 3 exam to think that if I can just deliver the perfect brief, then it'll cure everything. And the reality is that before you get in the car, there's a good chance the examiner's made his mind up about what mistakes he's going to make and where he's going to make them. And he'll put a route together that gives you the opportunity to spot those faults, analyse the faults, and there'll be space on that route to correct them. So it doesn't matter how good your brief is, it's not going to make any difference to that. So I think your brief needs to be just that, very brief. Just an outline of what you're going to be doing. And then you're going to talk him through it on phase 1, or her, which is just really, if you like, repeating your brief live on the move. And then it's really about your core comps, about spotting the fault, analysing the fault, and correcting it. And if you do the right things in those 3 areas, you'll get the result. Because the lowest grade you get in any of the core comps boxes at the top right of the form will match the grade that you get on the exam. So that's the important stuff. The stuff nearer the bottom, I've seen people have attitude and approaches marked as 2, yet they've still scored a 4 on the exam because their core comps matched. And it really is just about core comps. What I would say, Dean, is that I was charged with putting together a way of doing it. You know, when the client-centered or coaching approach first came in, I was charged with finding a way of doing it that got the results that we wanted. Hi, I hope I do remember you, of course. But doing it in such a way, because we all did the same when this was first mentioned after the Hermes report in 2010. We all attended a seminar, or we all read a couple of articles on it, and we're fired up with it, thinking, "Oh yeah, this is great. This seems like a really good way of going." And then when you get in the real world, at the pointy end, well, you find it's probably easier to go back to the ways you were doing it before. And I found that happened with me. So I had to find a way of making it happen so that it didn't, most importantly, didn't disrupt the business of the ADI that was doing it. And B, made it kind of easy to make the switch, if you like. So we came up with what we call a 3-hat approach. I mean, you're always responsible for safety. So if anything goes wrong, you need to be piling in and stopping it happening. So that was the first hat. The other hat was the advisor hat, we called it. And it's a changing from giving instruction. And it's only a subtle change. So instead of giving instruction, you just offer advice. Would you mind if I make a suggestion? You know, here's some things that you might want to try. My pupils normally find it useful to do this at this stage. What do you think of that? So instead of instructing, you're giving advice. Well, it's only a small change then. It's still the same content, but you're advising rather than telling. So, and I think it fits in with a key thing in client-centered learning, which is getting the learning out. You know, we talk about teaching and learning in the educational end of things. We do teacher training at the centre I work at. And so we've picked up a great deal from teacher training. I mean, I qualified as a teacher a while ago. Both the learner and the teacher can do the teaching, but the reality is only the learner can do the learning. So if we think about getting the learning out rather than putting it in, that's the subtle change. It may well be a very, very similar process, but one is client-centered and one isn't. And it is having the learner, I know this is a long-winded answer, Dean, sorry. We're having the learner really in an active role, at least taking part in the decision-making process to get to where we need to be. Better still, taking full ownership of it, if that makes sense. Hopefully that answered your question. It wasn't a short answer, but hopefully it tells you. Well, you can tell me in a second whether it did or not. Good morning, Ayub. No, I never thought about becoming an examiner. No, it's not something that appeals to me at all. For the first, or the biggest reason, I suppose, is I'm not good at sitting and being quiet. It's not exactly something I'm good at. But you find some examiners are like that. They are really quite chatty because they don't want to sit quiet either. So I mean, I've got some. Tell you what I have got that might help. Let me post this link. I'm not sure if I can leave this in the comments. Oh, no, I can post it here. The link I've just put down there is I've taken from the examiner guidance what they're looking for in terms of marking you the highest marks. The bits in red are the bits that hopefully you shouldn't do. Morning, Kieran. Next students, there's lots of stuff planned, but it's my entry is quite full. But we do have potentially a couple of students. But I'm also going to be doing some training videos for the Part 3 exam, the qualification process for ADIs. And we've got a couple of learners lined up for that. That might help ADIs or PDIs, people who are going towards the qualification, might help them understand the basics. I mean, what we've done is we've taken, or rather I've taken the approach where I've taken all of the stuff that isn't required out. And what we normally do is when we're training instructors, we want to train them for the real world. Because well, we're going to let them loose with our name on the car at the end. But as an experiment, I've stripped all of that away and I've looked just at what does it take to pass the test. Now, we never like training for the test because that's a bad way of doing training. However, we can do that because they're going to come through an induction process, which will then get them ready for the real world. So I've been able to focus on just really stripping away all of the extraneous stuff that's not required. Do I watch other driving instructors on YouTube? I do sometimes, I hope, when I get the time. I watch some of Blaine Walsh's stuff. Tony Curran, I like to watch. Helen from Purple Driving School. So I think we're all aware of each other. I watch Jed and Claire's stuff sometimes. So it's just when I have when I have quiet moments for relaxation, what do? I either go out for a ride on my bike, I drive in my car, or I watch other driving instructors. Proper busman's holiday. Good morning, Shannon. Tips for the morning of your driving test. Do what you do. Try not to overthink it. It's the easiest thing in the world. But your instructor wouldn't be putting you in for test if you weren't ready. If you're nervous, there are things you can do. All this nervousness and the anxiety and the worry and that sort of stuff, that lives in your conscious mind and it'll prey on you. But your conscious mind's quite clumsy and it can only think of one or two things at a time. So if you give it something else to do, it might distract it. The things you can do are breathing exercises. You don't have to breathe deep or take big breaths, but if you think about it in terms of just focusing on how much air is going in and out, or having a little routine where you breathe in for 7, hold for 7, out for 7, or better still, in for 7, hold for 7, out for 10. So you've got to actually breathe out a little bit slower than breathing in. And that occupies your conscious mind. In the meantime, your subconscious mind is able to just get on with the job. And it's surprising how much that works. If you ever look at Nikki's lesson, I think it was either 17 or 19, where she was having a panic about roundabouts. We applied that technique and it worked for her. Hopefully that helps. What bike have I got? I drive a Honda Pan-European, or ride a Honda Pan-European. Before that I had a Honda Firestorm, but which was a phenomenal piece of machinery, but I'm too old for it now. I'm a fat old guy now, so I need something that's a little bit more sit-up. But I love the Pan-European. I was sort of prepared to be disappointed in it, I suppose, because it's a fat old man's bike. But it does everything I want. It's a phenomenal piece of kit. Rode it all the way down to Italy. Oh right, the Triumph. I do like the Triumphs. I nearly bought one of those, nearly, but it was a toss up between that and the Pan European. I bought the Pan European because it was 15-year-old and had 7,000 miles on it. It's immaculate. If you pass the test and missing your instructor, get back to him for some Pass Plus or a motorway lesson. I'm sure he'll be delighted to see you. Hi Ayub, first drive from Birmingham. I'm not sure I do. I may have seen his stuff. I'm constantly scanning around. Self-driving cars. Ooh. Yeah, that's. They had, in fact, they do have the technology in trains. The Bay Area Rapid Transit, BART, in San Francisco was the first, I think one of the first ones. But it crashed a lot and the public lost faith in it. So it's still driverless, but interestingly enough, they have a driver in the front of it. Probably just reading a book. He's not actually driving the train, but the public feel more comfortable about it. So I think that's probably the main thing. I mean, the Tesla had a driverless thing, but it unfortunately there was a crash and the person in it was killed. So that set it back a little bit. I think it'll end up that way, but we're a little way off it just now. But a lot of the modern cars have got all sorts of technology in them now that make them easy. I mean, look at the cars that can park themselves. It's interesting. Technology is amazing. I mean, who would have thought just a short while ago we could do this kind of stuff, that you could be sat in your office chatting to people all over the place. Incredible, really. So I don't know. I'm not sure if I think they're a good idea or not. They'll probably do me out of a job. So yeah, they're a bad idea. That's what I think. That's what I think. I hope driverless cars, bad idea. So I'm going to do again, I've got another little piece of technology that I've not had before, something called Camtasia. I'm going to do the PowerPoint presentation that I do for workshops. I'm going to go through that and record it and post it either on the YouTube channel here or host it on my website. I'm looking at this kind of stuff because I'm approaching retirement age, and my mind started to drift towards, well, what am I going to do when I retire? Well, I can't do nothing because that would drive me nuts. And I thought, it might be nice to be able to set up a resource where you can do this kind of stuff. I like helping people, and it gives me the opportunity to do that. I might do some training videos, that kind of stuff. Interesting question, Ayub. The driverless car has a crash. Is it your fault or the car's? Well, that's what we have insurance for, and I'm sure there'll be a post-mortem afterwards. Hiya, Dean. My last standards check was 1,000 years ago. It must be any time soon. My last one was actually a fleet standards check, or it was a check test then. I assume I don't get singled out so much because when the guy sees the results of my work with the part 3s that go through. The handouts for the part 3 training course. No, well, they're there for LDC trainees, I think. I might do some resource that I might make available. Watch this space, I suppose. But it's the stuff that we do there is for LDC trainees, and they pay a premium for that. So not 100% sure, James. Watch this space, but you can't get a hold of the LDC materials unless you're with LDC. Unfortunately, at this moment in time. Well, you passed your test first time. Okay, that's nice. I'm pleased that it was. I'm pleased it was useful to you. And I think you're right that the worst part of any test is the build-up, because we wind ourselves up. Sorry, James. Of course you are. It's still early Sunday morning, you know. Whereabouts are you located, James? why don't you pop along to one of the workshops and we'll give you them then. I think I made the handouts available on the LDC student financial page. Would I say I was financially secure? That's a personal question. And what do I think of driving instructors' pays? Pay, yeah, can't even say it, pay. Driving instructors are paid different rates depending on where they live, depending on what their customers are prepared to pay them. That's the key thing. I'm not financially secure. You cheeky monkey. I'm not telling you. I'm not driving a Ferrari, that's for sure. And I live in Nottingham in West Yorkshire. I think if I was financially secure, perhaps I'd be living in Cheshire, next door to David Beckham, maybe. It's an interesting industry that we're in. In fairness, I think it's no secret that we don't necessarily work together like some industries do. For example, I'm an assessor as well as a qualified teacher, and in those industries, everybody seems to want to help each other. In the driving instructor world, I think we're so busy just looking after our own interests. That's maybe not the right way to describe it, but we're too busy earning a living to find time to work with each other. But back to James, get yourself along to one of the workshops. I will check after we've finished here that that's the case, that those things are available. But I'll come back to you. I'll come back to you on that one. If I'll have a quick look now while I wait for the next question. Just checking the files area. We are, James. If you go into the files area on the LDC students page, you'll find a reflective log and some stuff on there. There's no substitute for being on the workshop though, with the interactive exercises that go on. You'll definitely find it worth your while. Hi Ayub. Yes, Nikki. She did get married recently. She has another test booked, and she will be coming back for some lessons pretty soon. So she had a lot going on, Nikki. She moved house, then she got married. She just had a baby. So it's a busy time for her. But you will be seeing her again soon. I won't give away any test dates and stuff because that puts a little bit of pressure on it. And back to what somebody was saying earlier on about the build up to the test. I think it gets pressurized, and everybody sort of winds themselves up into a frenzy, if you like. Working my way around the software here, getting back to the right page. So what stage whereabouts are you in your part 3 training currently? James, sorry, that was wrong. Hi Dean, I do work with the odd learners. It's when we're developing new excuse me, when we're developing new packages, new techniques, new materials. I'll take learners out to do that. We've got potentially a couple of learners lined up, but we're just discussing with them at the moment because of course it's a lot of pressure on them to be videoed. Hi James, no, it's not on the forum, it's on the LDC student Facebook page. If you email me, I'll send you the link. I don't want to put the link here in the let's have a look. Let me have a look. Just seeing if we're linked via Facebook, in which case oh, come on. Not sure what happened there. Okay, how are you finding it then, James? 30 hours in, you should be starting. It should be starting to make sense to you now. If you look on the in the files area, I just went to have a look before and it logged me out of this, so I'll do it. I'll do it afterwards. But if you have a look on that page in the files section, it's on the right at the top. You should find a reflective log in there, which will help. Your trainers haven't got these packages yet because we're still testing them at head office. It's something that we will roll out, but I'll do it at the next tutor meeting when we get everybody together. Do I like working for LDC? Well, I've been with them for 25 years, so I think that answers the question. Been there from the start. Joined them as an instructor, became team leader, instructor, trainer, so on and so forth. And I've done pretty much every job in the company, apart from accounts. So I still enjoy it. I get up in the morning, I want to go to work. I particularly enjoy the stuff that I'm doing at the minute, which is developmental stuff and doing all the CPD for instructors, getting involved in the changes to the way we do the Part 3. That's a great question, Dean, and everybody's going nuts on it. And it's everybody seems to think that all you've got to do is mention risk at the start. Not everybody, but I mean that's what I'm reading, and that's just not the case really. I'm not so sure that we need to focus on risk at the start. What we need to do is I have a general format, if you like, which is something along the lines of, after you've done your personal greetings, I would normally say, okay, tell me about your reflection, because I'll let them do it, or have them do a reflective log, if they want to, of course. So in light of your reflective log, if they haven't done a reflective log, I'll say, okay, so after last week, how do you think that went? In light of that, what do you think the next logical step might be? We have a program that they can loosely follow their way through and make choices. If they're giving me well, I'm not sure what I want to do, isn't that your job? Can't you choose? Which is the standard response that the ADIs think they're going to get. I would say, well, okay, here's some choices you can make. Which one of those do you think would work best for you? Okay, if we're going to do that, let's say, for example, we're moving from quieter junctions to busy junctions. So if we're going to move on to busy junctions, what's different about this? Well, and they'll normally say, well, there'll be a bit more traffic. Okay, so if there's more traffic, what do we need to do to take account of that? And they're normally pretty smart. They'll say, oh, well, I'll need to be, my observations will need to be better. Okay, in what way? Well, I need to be, looking back and forth a bit more. So what's different about the traffic you're going to encounter? Well, it's probably traveling faster. So when you do make the decision, what's that going to mean? Well, I'm probably going to have to get on with it. Okay. So while we're setting that up, do you want any extra help from me? Do you want me to talk you through it? Do you want me to demonstrate it? Do you want me to just prompt you? Do you want to just have a go at it on your own with me just keeping you safe? Because of course, as ever, when we're doing something new, I've got the dual control, so I've got your back covered, and you can shout up for help at any time that you want. And then the final thing before we set off doing it is how we're going to structure the thing that we just talked about, but also how will we measure whether we've been successful. Now, in that little dialogue there, you've covered an awful lot of stuff. You're covering teaching and learning strategies, you're covering lesson planning, and you're also covering risk management. And it's just what we've done as instructors all the time. It's just being talked about a different way. But this risk management is not new. I mean, the risk management came about when the instructor's register was created, because it was created because of dangerous instruction. So, there was too many people being killed. Back in the 60s, I mean, you're looking at about 8,500, 9,000 people every year were killed on our roads. And the seriously injured statistics were huge. Now, that number's come down. Some of that's because cars are more difficult to kill yourself in, but it's because we've got better as instructors at managing the safety. So what they're looking for is, the register was set up to make sure that we as instructors were creating safe drivers, and that we as instructors managed the risk and then gradually handed that risk over to the learner driver when they were ready to take it, so that when they turn up for test, they're able to manage all risks around them. So that's what the job's always been about. So that's where this risk management is. Hopefully that makes sense. The new driving test, there's all sorts of things. If you look on gov.uk, you'll find out all about the changes to the driving test. Let me find you a link. So they're going to be doing some stuff with sat navs. They're going to be doing less manoeuvres, a bit more independent driving, really. So it's more of the testing of the things like pulling up on the right-hand side of the road and moving off again. Now, there's a big debate in the industry as to whether that's a good idea or not. Well, it doesn't matter whether it's a good idea or not. That's what's happening. So we just have to get on with it. We're not faced with a choice. And driving into a bay and reversing out. Well, these are the things that people do every day. Personally, I think they're bad habits, and I'm not comfortable with them. But that's what's going to be tested. So that's what we're going to have to teach. Let me find the changes to the test. They've published some stuff which tells you all about it. And here is the link here. That'll tell you everything you want to know. Did that answer your question, Dean? And I rambled on a little bit there. So I think this is where the just do what you've always done argument comes in. Because if you were doing your job effectively, then you'll be taking care of that. Unfortunately, what the DVSA are saying is that a lot of the ADIs that were presenting themselves for the old check test weren't really doing it properly. And that's why these changes came about. They want to see that you've got the learner involved in the process. And that this was the thinking behind it, that if we can get the learner involved in the decision-making process, not just about look ahead, what can you see, what you're going to do, but how are we going to put this together? And in my mind, what great drivers are people who make great decisions. So I see my job really is to help the learner look at their options, look at the consequences of each of the choices they might make, and then make the right choice. I hope there's no cameras in the car. My learners, they get nervous about the cameras to begin with, but they very quickly forget about them. But of course, any learner that's coming to do that work with me knows about the cameras in advance, and we set it up that way. They're not just your standard paying customers who turn up just to find that there's a camera in the car. We set it up beforehand. This is why we're discussing with some learners at the moment that we think would be really good, that would come across well, and that have got a bit of personality about them, so that it at least makes interesting videos. It's an interesting point you make, Dean, and I think you'll find that there's a lot of examiners. I've spoken to quite a few recently, and I've had some fairly in-depth conversations about what it is that they want from the test. I think they like this. The majority of them like the standards check because it gives them a bit more scope, a bit more leeway to think, well, okay, let's have a chat about this. And it's not have you done it or have you not. It's, well, you've done it, but at what level? Other areas, they feel it helps them give you fuller feedback, if you like, to say, well, look, you did that, but you could have done it a little bit better by thinking about this. And I think if you look in the guidance, I mean, I've stripped out that file I posted at the start. I've stripped out. In fact, what I'll do is each time I mention it, I'll post the link, because these comments come up while I watch the video live, and I think they're clickable. If you look at that link, what I've done is I've stripped out all the other wording, and it's just about what the examiner's marking, what would tell them that you've done it properly, what would tell them, so what gets you a 3 and what gets you a 0 in that particular row. So they're able to grade you on each of 17 criteria, which gives them the ability to really get into it, in the nitty-gritty, and help you to develop. That's the plan. And the majority of examiners are pretty good, I find. The ones I've come across, you do hear stories of the odd road one, but I mean, I couldn't possibly comment. It's I don't think there's enough understanding, or there's enough crossover between examiners and ourselves. We tend to keep ourselves away from them, and they keep themselves away from us. If we knew a little bit more about each other's worlds, I think it would be better. And I welcome the move from the DVSA to be recruiting from ADIs to become examiners. I think it helps with the better understanding of each other's worlds. Most ADIs, I find, don't really fully understand what the driving test is. It isn't just tick boxes, or you've done that, you haven't done that. They apply what they call a fault escalating scale. I'll give you for example. I was talking to an examiner about this very issue. People was driving along 40 mile an hour area between two towns, or two villages. Straight road, 40 miles an hour, path on one side. Nobody about, nobody coming towards them. They hit the curb twice. There was no mark on the form, because that's seen as not noteworthy. Now, had that escalated, so it didn't deviate too far from the norm. It did a little bit, and nobody was adversely affected. Now, if there'd been somebody on the path near where they hit the curb, that could potentially be a dangerous, or at least a serious. Or if they'd hit the curb and gone over the white line to the other side, that would be probably a serious. If there was somebody coming the other way, it would be a dangerous. So they do apply this fault escalating scale. Hi, Ayub. Does the grade matter when you're looking for an instructor? Well, that's a question only you can answer. I think the most important thing is that you and the instructor match, that you're able to get on, that you're going to be able to get lessons that are geared to you as an individual. I think that's more important, because the grade is a snapshot of the instructor on that day, at that time, with those pupils in those circumstances. And whilst it's a good guide, it doesn't tell you everything. I think when you're choosing an instructor, the best thing you can do is try and speak with people that have trained with that instructor. Look at that instructor's reputation. Look at how they carry themselves. Do you see them driving around smoking in the car? Do you see them with their elbow up? Do you see them speeding? Do you see them parking badly? That's somebody who doesn't care about what they do. Is their car dirty? Well, nothing says sloppy like a dirty car. So it's important. It's not just about the grade. It's also, the questions that we ask as learner drivers is, what's your pass rate and how much is it? Now, we ask those questions because we don't really know what other questions to ask. But the reality is, if you can get the lessons geared to you as an individual, and a plan put together that suits you and your learning styles, it's going to be much, much more effective. You're going to get to test in less lessons. So more expensive lessons can work out cheaper. But you might get lucky and catch somebody who's just at the start of their career, and they're building their diary up, and they're not charging the higher rates. So it's a fairly complicated thing. Very good, Phil. I'm able to say that because I've closed the blinds, and you can't see my car. Love it. But it's a complicated thing. You're not, when you're buying driving lessons, you're not buying a bag of sugar, so you can't really compare it. Like I make wine, a little secret shed, and I use a lot of sugar in winemaking, especially this time of year when it's fruit winemaking. So I will go and I use Tate and Lyle sugar, um, and I'll go to the place that sells Tate and Lyle sugar the cheapest. But that's because that's a particular commodity that's going to be the same no matter where I get it. If I'm looking for lessons for myself in something, for example, when I trained to be a teacher, I did my research. I looked around, and the last I found, I narrowed it down to about 5 or 6 places that I could do my teacher training. And the final decision was based on, I rang around these places, and there was one place that really stood out. That the guy sounded, now he may have been making it up, I don't know, or it was maybe just a good sales front, but the guy seemed really interested in me, in helping me develop. So I was happy to spend, and it was quite a considerable amount of money. I was happy to spend that money with him because I felt that guy was invested in me, and that guy was probably going to do his utmost to help me get to where I wanted to be. So hopefully that makes sense. Hi, did I think of creating my own school? No, actually no. I did have my own school when I first qualified in 1988. I ran an associate driving school in Peterlee, with a partner. And we had some instructors working for us, and it was kind of okay, but I wanted to get into instructor training. And I saw the opportunity with LDC and joined them. And to be honest, I suppose I could have done over the years, but I'm invested in the project. And I feel that, without going into it and doing an advert for LDC, I believe in what we're doing. And I'm happy doing what I'm doing, if that makes sense. Are you going to take a picture of the car when it's clean, Phil, and show us? That's a great question, Dean. Do I feel the quality of instructing has got to a higher level from when we first started? This is a difficult one. I would say there are less characters in the industry than there was when I first started. There seemed to be an awful lot of ex-army and ex-police instructors around who would use methods that you just couldn't use now. For example, the guy who taught me to learn to drive, great old guy, really interesting character, but he was a psychopath. When we came to do hill start, he made me take my watch off and he put it under the back wheel. And if I got things wrong, he used to use a steel ruler and whack me on the back of the hand. It's just like, when I think back now, I mean, it was physical abuse. I put up with it because he taught all my friends and everybody got through their tests. Is the standard higher? I think there's always been a band of ADIs who were passionate, for whom it wasn't a job. It was almost, it sounds cheesy, but a vocation. They had a desire to make the roads a safer place, and they had a desire to help people. And they're the guys that are at the top end of it. I think there's more of those now, I think. But it's a difficult job because you do feel like you're on your own, and people think it's crazy to say that when you're meeting new people all the time. But, well, you are, because all the planning and all the other bits and pieces that go behind it really stop you having the kind of interactions you would want. The thing I love about the client-centered approach is that it releases you from a lot of that thinking and a lot of that planning, and because the learner's involved in it. And I think you've got more time for clear blue thinking. I think you've got more time using a client-centered approach to be really creative and find ways of really helping the individual. So I'm not sure if it's got higher or not. There's always been great tutors around, great trainers. I think the move to client-centered is going to change things because, well, people are coached in schools now. So we're coming now to a generation, this next generation, are used to the coaching approach. And if we start trying to tell them what to do, they're not going to like it. That's an interesting one, I hope. In the 80s, people had less cars, and now every home has 2 or 3 cars. Why is that? Well, it's because they've got more money. There's more disposable income. Public transport isn't as good as it used to be. If you've got a small child, it isn't easy to get on and off public transport. It's not as reliable as it used to be. And of course, we have got used to having it. I don't know if that answers your question. I'm not 100% sure. Can you just clarify your question for me a little bit, please? What is it exactly you're asking me there? Sorry if I'm being a bit dim. But an interesting one back to the point you were making, Dean. I certainly feel I'm a better instructor now than when I first qualified. If I'm brutally honest, I'm not sure I knew what I was doing properly when I first qualified. I was taught to pass the ADI exam. And to be fair, I didn't really have much idea about anything else. And I kind of bumbled my way through it. And I remember, and I share this with inductees when I'm training them, they're just about to launch their business. I can still remember the moment 28 years ago. I was sat around the corner from my first pupil, my first ever paying customer. And I nearly didn't go. I was absolutely terrified. I thought, oh my goodness, I'm going to get found out here. This is all going to crash and burn, and I'm going to be found out for a fraud, and the world will end. But you somehow bumble your way through, and when I think of what I'm able to do now, just through experience, but I'm also very fortunate that I do the induction training for everybody who comes through the LD system. So we're currently we've had 2,800 people on our franchise over the years. So I steal their ideas too. And I don't pass them off as my own. I always give credit. Well, some of them I steal as my own. Yes, you're right, Ayub. Cars are more popular and more affordable because we have more disposable income. So it's our job as an industry, really, to make sure that we're equipping people for that world. And this is where management of risk is important, helping the learner to evaluate what's going on ahead of them, helping them to realize what choices they could make and what the sensible choice would be. Taking responsibility for their own actions, if you like. That's what the client-centered approach is all about. You can very easily sort of train somebody to get through the test, just by practicing on test routes almost. That's going to become less easy with this new test because you've got to be more of a driver now, I think. I think the test is harder than it used to be for that very reason, that it's all about your decision-making process now. Has technology changed the way driving instructors teach learners? No. Well, I can't speak for others. All I can tell you is that what I do is I try and find out how I can best help the individual that's sat next to me. What is it they need from me? How can I assist you to get where you need to be? Technology is coming into it in terms of sat navs they're going to use on tests, but I don't think it. And I suppose the change that's come about for me is I no longer teach. I think it was Albert Einstein that said, I do not teach, I merely provide the environment in which learning can happen. So my job as an instructor is to create the right environment where learning can take place. My job is to keep people safe while they experiment, because the thing that does the teaching is experience. You experience something, you reflect on it, you work out, what have I learned from that? What else could I have done? If it happened again, what would I do next time? That's the real teaching tool, and the knack, if you like, for a great trainer is to, or a great facilitator of learning, is to help that happen in a fulfilling way whilst keeping them safe in a reasonable amount of time, if that makes sense. I don't know if that answers your question, or please feel free to tell me it didn't, and I'll try again. But that's how I see the way that I've developed as a trainer. I got to a point not long after I qualified where if I'm honest, it was all about me. Listen to how slick my briefs are. Listen, look at how flashy I can make this sound. Look how many different ways I can explain something to you. And a great deal of it, I think, is sometimes um, we lose sight of the fact that we're dealing with a human being that's unbelievably complicated, and has needs in terms of learning. And the only way we're going to be effective at learning or helping them to learn is to find ways of meeting those needs. As an industry, we're poor at people with extra needs. We shy away from people who have stuff like Asperger's, and it's we say, oh, they've got special needs, I can't cope with them. And I'm often asked in my role as ADI support, well, I've got this pupil that has this condition, what do I need to do about it? And I always say the same thing, you're going to need to seek help, but you're very lucky because the help that you need is right next to you. You're sat next to somebody who's had a lifetime of dealing with that condition. And so they can help you to help them. Or they can help you to get advice from the place they go to when they need help with stuff. So you're quite right, Ayub. Learning to drive is not physically challenging, although it can be for some people who have disabilities or shortcomings in one way or another. It's all about the mental game. It's all about analysing what's happening ahead of you. And this is what makes great drivers. And having a plan. And this is where the new way of teaching, or the client-centered learning method, comes into its own. We need to have a plan based on what we see, the physical location, the geography of the place, what the road shape is ahead of us, parked cars, pedestrians, junctions. Also what we can't see. For example, what might be in driveways, what might be around the next corner, there might be a car hidden behind the wagon that's coming towards us that might overtake, and what we might reasonably expect. Now, this time of morning on a Sunday, if I'm out driving and I'm approaching a church, it might be reasonable to expect that there might be people coming out of that church now and making their way home for lunch. Their mind might be on the sermon they've just had. The cleric might have made some powerful points, and their mind might be on that. The cleric might have been able to make it resonate within them, and they're deep in thought on that, and they're not really watching what they're doing when they cross the road. They also might have children with them that have been forced to sit quietly in church for a little while, so they're now off the leash. They may run across the road to get to the car to go home, to do whatever it is that they're going to do this afternoon. So if we're planning all the time, if we're constantly evaluating, well, what's happening ahead of me here? What can I see? Are there things I might not see? Morning, Ash. And what might I reasonably expect at this time of day on this road? Hopefully that makes sense. So that's the mental game that's involved in driving, and great drivers plan for that all the time. So, good morning, Ash. Are we not happy to be here? Perhaps I should ask that question. I might not like the answer. Some interesting questions coming out. It's a fascinating chat, actually. A slow learner. It depends on your definition of slow. How do you measure slow? We tend to measure slow against how we learn or our experience of other learners. So what makes them slow? That's the key thing, isn't it? I have friends, same age as me. I was 60 this year, and they were put in what was termed at the time at school, long time ago, they were put in the dummies class. That's what it was called then. Very unfortunate term. It then became the remedial class, and now they have much kinder definitions of it. And these people were given up on because they were slow learners. Some of these people now are very successful business owners, and they're actually really quite smart. Most of them, the ones that I knew, there wasn't a massive amount of them, but dyslexia was a big problem, but it wasn't spotted. Deep thinking, I love deep thinkers. I'll sit happily by the side of the road having asked a question while somebody really works themselves through it and comes up with a solution. Because that silence is learning time, and the learning is coming out rather than being put in. One of the most difficult things to learn as a trainer who's trying to make the switch to client-centered is to ask a question and then be quiet. Because what we tend to do is, as ADIs, as trainers, we ask a question, and then if we get met with silence, we think, "Ooh, I'll ask another question just to clarify," and then think, "Oh no, maybe I didn't make a good point." I'll ask another one just to try and help them along the path. Where if you just ask a question and then just go quiet and stay quiet, it'll seem like a long time, but it really isn't. Now, if you have a look on some of the lessons you'll see me doing on YouTube, you'll see there's a lot of silence there. I'll come back to that late decision-making thing in just a second. That thinking time means they're just running through options. Late decision-making, that's a whole different thing. Is that a deep thinker, or is that somebody not looking far enough ahead? I would probably venture the opinion that they're not looking far enough ahead. And detaching personal issues with driving. Interesting. And linked to the one from James, do I think that older drivers need to have a mandatory test to keep driving? No, I don't. I think people who have had accidents should be assessed, and I think everybody should have their eyes tested every year. There are some older drivers who bimble around and cause issues for some people, but the reality is 17 to 22-year-old males are causing carnage on our roads. It's not the older drivers we need to be tackling. And of course, I would say that, me being an older driver. That's not where our attention needs to be placed. And youngsters are killing themselves, not because they can't drive, but because they make bad decisions. Learning to drive at night, absolutely. I think we should. It's part of Pass Plus. I think while they're making changes to the test, we really should be looking at these models, I think, and seeing what we can learn from it. You know, that we need to develop. We always should be looking to learn. And not just, you know, I mean, from our learners, from other places, we should be constantly evaluating the way that we assess. And again, this is something I've picked up from my work as an assessor now. Clients pushing to go for the test when they're not ready. Well, it's clients pushing to go for the test when they don't believe you when you say they're not ready. That's a different thing. If they knew they weren't ready, they wouldn't go. You get the odd one that's, "Oh, just go for the experience." So a conversation needs to happen in regard to, well, what's the standard that's being applied here? Now, you can download the criteria for the driving test, and you can see what it is that they're being assessed on. So if we have, and I'm a firm believer in this, that we have in our books, we have a master progress chart. There's some targets for each lesson, and the last target in each lesson is all about, are you ready for test? Well, does this meet the criteria on test? So we'd say, well, and they ask you all the time, don't they, would I fail my test for that? And just answer. We're told that you shouldn't answer yes or no. Just say, well, actually, yeah, you will. Do you know why? An examiner would mark it this way. Why do you think you would do that? If you were the examiner, how would you mark it? So when they say to me, am I ready for my test? I'll simply pick up the book. I don't have one in hand. I'll pick up the book that has the master progress chart in it. I'll hold it open and look at it and say, you tell me, are all those targets marked? The other information you want is in here. Tells them, are we meeting that standard? Because if you're not safe. You're not going to pass the test. So it's an interesting one. Sticking to the objective or make changes if needed. I'm not 100% sure what you mean by that. Could you just clarify that for me, pretty please? I think it depends on whose objective it is. And again, this is the difference in client-centered. I'm not sure that that's the case. I'm sure there are the odd instructors who might do that, but they're a very, very small minority. Um, I don't believe that, same as I don't believe that you fail your test if you go at the end of the month. But there is anecdotal evidence out there. There's not. I don't think there's any real evidence. I think the vast majority of driving instructors are doing their best to do the best job they can. But as in everything, you always get the odd one who perhaps isn't doing it the way they should. Lost the page now. Where are we? There it is. Sorry. So lesson plans going wrong. Whose lesson plan? In my experience, if a learner puts a lesson plan together or they're involved in it, very rarely goes wrong. But if we're trying to use our lesson plan, it doesn't always work. Hi, Ali. Yep, this is a problem. You've just qualified, and you're now going to have a different standard applied to you. I'll come back to that in just a second. So if their lesson plan's gone wrong, it's time to pull over the side of the road and say, okay, how's this working? They should hopefully be able to see. If it's their plan, they should be able to see it's not working. So this isn't working the way we thought it was going to be. What do you think we might do about that? They might come back to you and go, I really don't know. Say, well, okay, well, here's some options. Here's some choices we can make. Here are some things that we could do. Choose one of them. Let's see how that works. Hopefully that makes sense. So yes, after passing your part 3, you've now got you will be seen within 6 to 12 months. They are targeting the newly qualified. So you need to be making the switch to client-centered. I've put on here, again, because I'm mentioning it again, I'll post it here. So there's a clickable link, at least I think it will be. I'll be able to check afterwards. The link I've just put up there gives you the way that you're going to be assessed, what it is that they're looking for. So on part 3, you controlled everything. You controlled the lesson. You told them what they were going to do. They said they were going to have a lesson on this. You then took control. You told them what they were going to do. You gave them a brief. You then watched them. You taught them through it. You gradually helped them less and less. And then you just looked for faults. You spotted the fault. You analysed the fault and you corrected the fault. The change for standards check, in simple terms, is get the learner to do more of the work. If you're doing that, it should help you get the way you need to be. There are, now without plugging myself or LDC or anybody else really, there are lots of places out there offering standards check workshops. Get yourself along to one. A lot of them have got the courage of the convictions, and if you don't like what you've seen, they'll not charge you. Hi, Ayub. I can't really speak for other driving companies, but we at LDC have some very young instructors. There's one that lives fairly close to here, Ash. He is 22, and great instructor. I think it's about having a passion for it. Doesn't matter how old you are. Hi Ellie, so you passed yesterday, well done you. But you got lucky, okay, I think it's brilliant. Well done for the pass. Well done for looking at it and analysing it effectively and thinking, okay, I got lucky. And that you understand there are things that you don't know. What you need to do is, whilst you're out and about, is as you're gaining experience, as you experience stuff around you, always think afterwards, okay, how did that work? What did I do well? Is there anything I could have done differently? If I was going into that again, what else might I do? And that will help you to develop in a way that's going to accelerate because you're thinking about it and you're formulating plans. It will always help you to develop. You can always as well fire an email off to your instructor afterwards. If you hear a situation you think, I wasn't sure what I should have done there, have a chat with them. I'm sure your instructor will be more than happy to. And we always love speaking to ex-pupils. Well, there's loads of forums or Facebook groups that you can post questions on. You can ask your friends. But the best teacher you've got is experience. Even when you're learning to drive, experience is by far the best teacher. You experience something, you run back through it in your mind, so you're reflecting on it. You analyze what worked, what didn't, then think about, well, what will I do if that happens again? And then bingo, off you go, a new experience. And then you reflect, experience, reflect. And that's the way we learn as human beings. I'm probably just back to what we're talking about before, Ali, about making the change once you've qualified. It does seem very daunting when you've just qualified, and straight away you're going to have another test applied to you, which is a bit different than the one you've sat. So I'm busy working on a presentation that's geared around making that change from core comps to the standards check. The reason I want to do it is because it's going to be sometime fairly soon. There's going to be a change to the way that instructors are tested. The standards check is going to become the part 3. So of course I'm charged with trying to find ways around that and make sure that when the change comes that we're ready. So the two things can tie in together. So I'm busy working on that, and I've got a presentation I'm working on now. I'll probably do it later on today to start working on it, and I'll post the video, which is just me basically going through what the standards check is and what the form means, how they're marking you, what it is that you need to do really. And hopefully you'll find that helpful. So if you just keep popping back to the channel, it'll be on here somewhere, or send me a Facebook friend request, and that should should help you keep up with what I'm up to. Lots of questions by messenger too. Just trying to keep up. Did that answer your question, Ellie? Does that help? I mean, in terms of passing near sight to near sight, that's how most people do it. People won't let you go around them anymore because everybody's in too much of a hurry. And the only time people go around each other is when the road markings say that. It's fascinating stuff. This, there's been some super questions. I really enjoyed that. Good morning, Flora, and how are you today? So are you finding? Sorry, this is a question for Ash. Are you finding the client-centered stuff helps you? Have you tried it, or have you dipped your toes in that water? All the better for watching. Right. Clearly nothing better to do on a Sunday morning. Oh, thanks for that, Ryan. I'm really pleased that we were able to help you. I know I post that on the YouTube channel, but I truly mean it. I'm up in West Yorkshire, Dean, a little village called Nottingley. It's kind of on the intersection between the M62 and the A1. So how have you found driving since passing your test, then, Ryan? And a question, I suppose, for the ADIs who are on board here this morning. How many of you attended workshops or read client-centered books? That's an interesting question, Flora. I'll come to that in just a second. So extremely handy not having to depend on public transport. There is that. There is that. What other changes might it make to your life? This can help sometimes, Ryan, just to get things into perspective, how big the achievement is. Think about what else will change in your life. What other opportunities might that open up to you? And we'll come back to that in a second. Do I have, back to Flora's question, do I have students who resist the client-centered approach? Yes, I do. You know, if we say to them, what do you want to do today? Well, don't know. Okay. Well, if there was one thing you could choose to work on, what would it be? Well, I don't know. Isn't that your job? Aren't you the driving instructor? If I make these decisions, why don't you pay me? So is that the kind of thing that you mean? I assume it is. Well, for a lot of people, they don't want to take that level of responsibility, and it's for a lot of different reasons. We fear, as human beings, we fear judgment. We don't want to offer an opinion in case the person that's asked us for it derides us if we get it wrong. We go, "Pah, idiot! How could you think that?" Or we don't want to look foolish in a school environment. We don't want to look foolish in front of our peers. There are many, many reasons for not wanting to engage. It's very rarely that we don't want to. It's that we fear the consequences. So what we have to do is create an environment where we can remove that fear. It's a very gentle process and it can take a little time. And for some individuals, life has conditioned them in such a way that they're only with us a short time. We haven't got time to get underneath that. We haven't got time to remove those barriers. You know, if you've got somebody who's been told all of their life that they're an idiot, or that they'll never amount to much, or they're with in a family environment that's not supportive. Maybe they haven't got a family environment. Maybe they're with a partner who isn't supportive. You know, there's all sorts of stuff. Maybe, you know, life has conditioned them in a way that they just think, we've got to try and get them to see that they can trust us. So if we ask questions, and they'll sometimes say, why do you want to know that? I'll say, well, I'm just interested in your opinion. Now, for 17-year-old boys in particular, who wants to hear what a 17-year-old boy has to say? Nobody, except other 17-year-old boys. So if they meet an adult who seems genuinely interested in trying to help them and listens to their opinion and says, well, that's interesting. How does that apply here? So we're gradually chipping away at those barriers and finding ways of getting them to buy in, getting them to relax, getting them to understand that it's okay to offer an opinion, because even if Bob disagrees with me, we're not going to fall out about it. He's not going to tell me I'm an idiot. He's just going to go, oh, that's interesting. Tell me a bit more about that. Once you get people to drop those barriers, all things are possible. And you'd start to build a relationship that's built on trust. Trust is key. That's a relationship of equals, and that's very important. Except, of course, when things go pear-shaped, and then it goes from 50-50 to 100-0. That's important because we have to take care of safety. But we need that relationship to get back on an even keel as quickly as possible. And we do that sort of stuff by saying, look, okay, nobody's died. What have we learned from that? So these things are learning triggers. And it's all about being humble before those you want to help. It needs to be a desire to help rather than to dominate. That's a long-winded answer, I'm sorry. I kind of get into it, I get a bit evangelical. And once you can get somebody to that point, all sorts of changes start to happen. They start to also see the worth in themselves. And it's great if you can find it in yourself. But sometimes we need the help of somebody else just to show us that, you know, we aren't as stupid as people think we are, that we are capable of things. There's a really interesting thing with Bobby Jo Turner, who was one of the first learner that I applied this with back in the day. On the drive home from test, she said that she wasn't as stupid as people thought she was. I said, well, that's an interesting thing to say. What makes you say that? Check out what people have never thought I'd been up to much and they didn't think I'd do this, but I've done it. I've done it on my own, she said. You've done it on your own? She went, yeah. Every time I ask you a question, you just ask me what I think. So I've worked my own way through this. Well, that's fascinating. And I spoke to her some time later and asked her how it was going now, and she said it had changed her life. And I said, that's a very big thing to say. You might be, and back to the point that Ryan just made earlier, he's passed his test, he's not going to be inconvenienced. What she'd realised was it wasn't just about having the licence. It was about the process that went into it. She was able to see for herself that she's able to do stuff, that she's achieved something. She's achieved something probably on her own without too much help from elsewhere, and that she's actually worth something that she could achieve. So as a result, she then tells me she's going to go back to college and that she's looking for a different job. And so all sorts of things come from it. So I'll persist with it, not to the extent where I'll annoy them. If they're like, well, you made the decision, I'll just make the decision. And then at the end of the lesson, I'll say, what do you think we should do next time? And again, it was something I learned from Bobby Joe, where I kept saying to her, what do you think we should do next time? Don't know. And I said, well, you can make the choice. And she kept saying, I don't want to make the choice. No, I don't want to. That's your job. And then one day, about 10 lessons in at the end, I said, what do you want to do next time? And she came back to me different. She said, what's my options? Ooh. So that tells me that the barriers are starting to come down. So I said, well, we can do this, this, or this. She went away and thought about it, and then it's the rest, as I say, is history. Client Centre works with the practical part. I think it can be used for theory, not quite as effectively, but we can help people to see what options they have. And once you've worked out what your options are, you can then start thinking about, well, how am I going to go about that? So, let's say you've got this exam to sit here, and it's a theory-based exam. You know what the standard is. You can then work backwards. It's a case of, here's where we need to be, here's where we are. How are we going to plot the journey to that? So even though it's a theory thing, you can still have people, if you like, self-coach. Hope that answers your question. Hi Jake, you've had 2 lessons. Added your parents' policy on their car, brilliant. Moving off with a biting point, using electronic handbrakes. I hate them too. What I would do, if I was you, see if your parents can find somewhere quiet, take you there and play around with it, get the feel of it. If you try and tackle it as a technical exercise, it's probably going to seem troublesome. What you need to do is discover the feel of that handbrake, same as you do with the feel of the clutch. So if you're in an area where maybe a tiny little hill, and just play around with it, get the feel of it, away from any distractions, any other traffic, and just learn how to do it. Much the same as when you taught yourself to walk and taught yourself to talk. You have the capacity to try things, experience them, evaluate what worked, what didn't, and then try something different. You'll find a way that works for you. It's like finding the bite is different for everybody. Some people feel it, some people hear it, some people see it, some people have a combination of all three. And it's just a case of finding out what works for you. And this is the job of a client-centered trainer, which will link into your point here, Ali, in a second. We have to find ways of helping people to learn, not to teach them, but to help them to learn. It's a very different thing, because the learning comes out. Teaching is what we try and put in. That's a very basic description of it, but that's basically the tenor. So the main thing that's looked at in the standards check is, yes, you're still going to apply your core comps, but you're going to try and get the learner driver, or the qualified driver, whoever it is, to take part in the planning. If you look at the first row on the standards check that you're marked on, it says, did the trainer identify the pupil's learning goals? So if you jump in the car and say, right, we're doing turn in the road today, you've scored a 0 in that column. If you get the learner to say, well, what I'd like to do today is this, and I'd like us to do it in this sort of area, and this is the level of help I want from you, and this is how I'll measure whether I'm being successful. Well, that's a truly client-centered session. Good morning. I'm pleased you're enjoying the broadcast. I'm having fun too. I can't believe we've been on like an hour and 25. I'm chuntering away. This is the longest I've ever gone without a cup of tea. It's not really, I'm only kidding. I'm enjoying them too. I was going to say I like chatting to people. There's only me talking. I like to help people if I can. It's what I like doing. I think it's what's. I think client-led is the way forward, but you can do it between you. And it's very difficult to make the switch from core comps to client-led in one jump. There are some key things that can help. Hi Flora, how long did it take me to effectively utilize and incorporate? I've still not perfected it. It's a work in progress every time I do it. But I think to switch, I would never dream of giving instruction now. I can't think of the last time I did it, but it took me a good 2 years to get to that point. If I'm honest, maybe a little longer. To get really comfortable in my own skin and be sure. That probably took, probably took 3 years, maybe 4. And I think the thing that underpins it all is I don't feel, other than experience, there's anything I've got that isn't within the learner already. They've already got all the skills to do what they need to do. My job is to help them learn how to package those skills in a way that's useful in this situation. I'm just answering more questions. I'm getting questions on all formats. Does that make sense? You know, it's. I think maybe 3 years is maybe too long. I had the concept in my head, but to become comfortable in my own skin, to be sure that it was the right approach, to be confident that it would suit everybody. During the first workshops that I ran, I've had 450 something people through it now. During the first workshops, I would be speaking to ADIs, and they would say, "Oh, well, I've got learners you can't do this with." And at that point, I would likely say, "Oh, well, yeah, you probably have." But now I would say, well, no, everybody can be coached. Some are more difficult than others. And it's the barriers to learning that are the problem for them, I think. If we can learn to break those down and work on our techniques of breaking those down. But you've got to be very careful, because if somebody's resistant to it and you keep insisting, they might end up being annoyed with you and having lessons somewhere else. We've got to be careful about that, haven't we? We don't want to lose business over it. So just see it as a work in progress and just keep trying to get better at it. I think if you're applying your core comps, you probably wouldn't fail the standards check, but you're not being terribly client-centered. But I doubt you'd get an A. That's an interesting one, Flora. If somebody just can't park, the skills are not within them. The skills are within them. They just haven't found a way of utilizing them. That's the difference. It's the people who, I'll tell you what is said in our industry, that men are better parkers than women because men have better spatial awareness. Now, I'm not sure where this comes from, because at this time of year, on the lead into Christmas, oh God, I've said Christmas, look at that. It's only November. On the lead into Christmas, I'll be on Bridgate and Leeds, and I'll observe, I don't know, maybe 2,000 women walking in one direction, 2,000 women walking in the other direction. Everybody's carrying a load of shopping bags, and very few of them are bumping into each other. So the idea that they haven't got good spatial awareness is not true. What we've got to do is help them to find ways of using that spatial awareness. Now, funnily enough, I did a session the other day with a lady who was struggling with reversing right, reversing left, and bare parking. And she had all sorts of reference points and little tips and tricks that she picked up here, there, and everywhere. And I gradually chipped away at all those, got rid of them all. And I just said, so when you're driving out of the parking bay and away to the car park, do you struggle then with the amount of steering you need? Well, no. Well, it's the same going back. It's true. You just put the right amount of steering on around and come. If you haven't got the right amount of steering on, if you went forward and you hadn't got quite the right amount of steering on, what would you do? You say, oh, well, I'd probably reverse back and go forward. Well, you just do the same as you're going backwards. If it's not quite working, go forward and come back again. Just work it out. And we all have the capability to do it. So if anybody walks to the car under their own steam and speaks to you using their own words, they've got everything they need. And this sort of links into what you're saying there, Ali, that, what do you want to achieve today? And they go, I don't know. Beats me. And you might think they're thinking, what am I paying you for? And some of them might actually say that. And some of them might say, just tell me what I do. And that's fine. Just do that. But always add in some options. Well, look, here's some choices you could make. Or if they're doing that, just start the lesson the way you would normally. And then at the end of the lesson, say, okay, how do you think that went today? So tell me the bit that you liked. Is there anything you didn't like? Okay. So in light of what we've done today, what do you think the sensible thing to do would be to do next time? And again, they might go, don't know. So, well, here's some choices you can make. And this is the first step, I think, for people who are resistant, is buying into the process. And once you start making decisions, you're sort of halfway in, the door is open. And it's only a short step from that to then saying, oh, well, I think I can maybe do this. And it takes time. The reason that they don't buy in, the reason that we don't get good answers to the questions we ask, is probably because we're not asking good questions. So whenever it doesn't work for me, I always think, well, what else could I have done there? Is there a different question? So yeah, Flora, did that answer your question? Sorry, I'm kind of answering two questions at the same time here, and I'm not good at multitasking. Does that make sense? Well, to both of you really, to you, Ali, and you, Flora. Does that help at all? Clear anything up, or is there any other questions you've got? I will do a little video that goes through the basics of the standards check and what it is that they're looking for. I think we need to have the courage of our convictions as well. What did you like about the lesson? Is there anything you didn't like? And something really interesting came up from that when I started to do it. And I said to Claire on one of her sessions, is there anything you didn't like? And she went, well, actually, yeah, now that you've asked. So what was it? She said, do you know when I think this is crazy. She said, do you know, for ADIs, this sounds crazy. She said, do you know when I'm having my first attempt at something? You know that time when we talk them through it and we're constantly jibber-jabbering? I went, yeah. She said, could you shut up? I'm sorry, what do you mean? She said, could you just be quiet and let me concentrate? So you don't want any help from me at all? She went, no, I want you to keep me safe, obviously. If I'm going to hit something, stop me. If I'm getting it wrong, tell me. But other than that, could you just be quiet? And I thought, well, that's a bit strange. How's that supposed to work? So this is where it goes against your core comps, your full talk through. And she had a go at something, and it worked. Okay. Then we had to go at something else, and it worked. We had to go at something else. It didn't work as well, so we stopped. We had a chat about what worked, what didn't. We put a new plan together, and then I sat in silence and kept her safe while she did that. And suddenly, I started to develop. I started to realize that human beings are actually pretty clever, there's a fantastic book written. It's about tennis. It's called The Inner Game of Tennis by Tim Galway. It's brilliant. It's about the inner and outer self, or the conscious and subconscious mind, or self one and self two, and how we're conflicted and we fight internally. That we fear judgment all the time. We fear failure, and it ties us up in knots. You're getting your first car at Christmas. How exciting! Hey Jake, no problems at all. There's such a wide range of choice. It depends. How long are you going to buy a banger and just keep it a short while, or is this going to be your forever car? And for J, where are we? So, okay, so if I ask you, if we look at the stall, now, what I would look at is, okay, let's look at it. Let's see what the consequences of that stall were. If there's nobody about, it doesn't really matter. If there was people about, could that be a safety critical incident? And if so, you think, okay, well, if we were in that same situation again, and let me ask you the question, Jake, and see how it works for you. If you the situation where you stalled, so you say you've had some stalls, let's assume that's two. Put your mind to those stalls and have a think about what happened. Just rerun it in your mind, and then think about the safety implications. Is it important that you don't stall? And if it is important, what will you do different the next time you come to it? And we'll come back to that in a little while. To answer your question, just a banger. It doesn't really matter, does it? I would go for a smallish one for insurance purposes. I would probably go for something like a Corsa, Fiesta, which is a lower insurance group. I would probably have a black box fitted, so that the insurance company can track you, because you'll get the biggest discount following having the black box in. And of course, be a good boy. Hi Oliver, there are courses to help with motorway driving. You can either go back to your instructor and have a motorway driving lesson, or perhaps sign up for a Pass Plus course, which is 6 hours, a minimum of 6 hours, to cover nighttime driving, motorway driving, rural driving. If you have a look at my YouTube channel, I've put some Pass Plus videos up there that might help you, and I've put a couple of demonstration drive videos up there about motorway driving, about getting on and off and how to deal with it. Hiya Flora, pleased to be of assistance. I'll schedule. I think the way that it works is, once I schedule the thing, it notifies people, but I'll have a look at that. Clio's pretty good, yeah. 1.2, they're all right. A decent little car. Issues with build quality, which is why I asked you if you're keeping it a long time. But the Clio's a good, solid little car. Like I say, get the black box fitted. Have a search around for insurance companies. How old are you? So if you don't mind me asking. Okay, so the issue isn't the stalling, is it? It's the worry about what will go wrong if you do the other thing, and because you're counteracting the other things. Bye, Flora. Then it gives you a different result to the one that you wanted. So if you can find somewhere quiet, then you'll find that you can discover a methodology that works for you, that you can repeat over and over. Yes, so if you have a think about that, Ali, people find it difficult to follow your talk through because they're concentrating on what they're doing. And some people can do the two, some people can't. For example, my children, when they were studying or revising for exams, would have loud music on. When I qualified as a teacher, if I was doing some work on things, if I'm working on stuff here in my office, I need quiet. I can't concentrate with noise going on. So somebody talking me through something would get in my way. So the key thing is to say to the learner, okay, how do you want to go about this? Here's a load of options. I can talk you through it. I can just keep you safe because I've got the dual controls here and stuff, and let you get on with it on your own. I can help you a little bit. I could show you first. Which one of those do you think would work best for you? And they may not know, so you say, should we try them all? And you'll find a methodology that works, and this is the key to becoming effective as a tutor. You'll find a method of working that works for both of you. Does that answer your question? Back to it. It's Cush Bro. 17 a few weeks after Christmas. Okay. Then you want to be really searching around for insurance companies, because some of them are going to really, really take you to the cleaners. Getting messages from all directions. Sorry, apologies. Yes, explore. So you're exploring your skills as a trainer because you're brand new, so you're developing as well as your learners. So experiment with things. Find you've worked in a fairly rigid framework, your core comps for the exam. So you can now unshackle yourself from that and explore what possibilities there might be. And as long as you're keeping your pupil, you and everybody around you safe, it's fine. Hi Ryan, it's driving a petrol after you've learned a diesel can be troublesome because they stall a lot easier. They do feel quite different. So the key thing is, again, because clutch control can't really be taught. It's a feel thing. It's like, you know, if there's something on the desk here, if I pick it up, you can't really be instructed on how to do that. You give me a lot of technical instructions, but it's, you know, what is the exact pounds per square inch I'm using here? I discover it by trying to pick it up a couple of times. If I don't get it right, it drops. So I'll play around with that. That's the same process that was at play when you learned to walk. You tried a lot of stuff. Some of it worked, some of it didn't. So by discovering the feel of the new car, it doesn't take long. Just take yourself out of traffic, just somewhere really quiet, and just mess around till you find the right feel. Awesome, man. Good morning. How are you? Excellent, Jake. I'm sorry we couldn't find an instructor. We don't have too many in that area. But if you find the videos useful, brilliant. I'm not too bad at all. I'm enjoying this this live video stuff. Have you? I know you do a lot of content on your channel. Awesome, man. Do you? I can't remember if you've done any of this live stuff. I've watched some of your videos, which I enjoy. This live thing's quite good, actually. I'm enjoying it. I thought I'd probably just do this for a very short stint, but we've been at it an hour and 3/4 now. The key thing, looking back, Jake, on your learning, if you can find an instructor who's happy to work with you, and if you can put plans together about what you want to do, and it's really a case of thinking, well, what do I want to do next? You know, how might I go about that? What level of help do I need from my instructor? And if you can find somebody who can do that for you, you're laughing. Hi Ryan, 20 to 21. Yes, it'll be lower than when you're 17, but they're still going to charge you a lot of money. Unfortunately, the type of cars that you're looking at buying get stolen, and 17 to 25-year-old males cause most of the carnage on our roads. So you're an insurance risk, unfortunately, even though you may not be. You're seen as such until you prove otherwise. Which is why the black box in your car. I mean, yes, it's an invasion of your space and a curtailing of your civil liberties, but it will get you a big discount afterwards. So it's worthwhile putting up with, I think. The new driving test, it's different. A personal opinion, I think we're going to start testing the bad habits that people develop after they pass the test. Parking on the right-hand side of the road. The highway code says you shouldn't do that. You shouldn't park against the flow of traffic. And driving into bays and reversing out. Highway code says you shouldn't reverse for more than is strictly necessary. I don't know. I'm not sure if I like the idea or not. I think the test will be better, and it will make for safer drivers because you're doing more independent driving. The manoeuvres are not really a test of whether you can drive or not. The manoeuvres are, you know, because you can practice the manoeuvres. You're not a risk to anybody. more driving means more assessment of live risk on the road. So it's got to be better, I think. Well, I wait with interest to see what happens to the pass rates. The pass rates aren't terribly good at the minute. I'm hoping they'll go up because we're testing people's decision-making things. And I don't know what the figures are, but a lot of people fail on manoeuvres. Does that make you a good driver or a bad driver? I'm not sure, really. I'd much rather they tested extra things like they're talking about. I think eventually it should be tested on motorways. You know, or maybe there's a two-stage test. Having said that, motorways are the safest roads anyway, so they're not an issue currently. Well, I think it's probably, we've been at an hour and 3/4 now, and I'll probably die if I don't get a cup of tea soon. March or April, Jake, I think you will be sitting the current one. I'm fairly sure, but we don't know for certain. I don't think it's something to worry too much about the new test. It's still based on the same sort of stuff. So it might also be worthwhile, Ryan, looking at that, to do some eco-safe training. It will help you save fuel, but the key thing on the telemetrics that you're putting in the car, if you're driving in a fuel efficient way, it's in a black box friendly way, and the better your driving is that the black box measures, the lower your insurance premium. So if you investigate eco-safe driving, it will help you to get higher scores. I'm just looking for a video link. You give me just 1 second. I'll find that link. Travel driving advice. I was looking on the Energy Savings Trust website. They did have a video on here, but it seems to have disappeared. But here's a bit of a guide. Hi, Ali. The business side of things. It can be difficult. Planning, you've got to be methodical. I would seek the advice of an accountant and try and find an accountant who deals with driving instructors and get them to set things up for you in a way that works. Joining one of the driving instructors associations could be a help. They often offer workshops on that kind of thing. Best thing you can do is speak with the Inland Revenue. They've got some great advice. And again, if you give me 1 moment, I shall find you the link. If I remember where I put it. Oops. Get rid of that. This is the link that Flora asked about before, about reversing. This is... All right, when dealing with a pupil, money at the start. Have a set of terms and conditions so that everybody knows what's expected of them, what to do, when to do, what happens if lessons are cancelled, what happens if you're late, what happens if they're late. If you go to one of the big driving schools and look at their terms and conditions, they'll have pretty much everything covered. So base yours on theirs. I'm just looking for the stuff that I did from the Inland Revenue. Let me find it now. Just posted it the other day. It's because I'm in the wrong place. Incompetence is a terrible cross to bear. do have some advice listed on here somewhere. I will find it in just a second, forgive me. There we go. Copy link. Hopefully they'll all help. The inland revenue are really good at helping these days. They never used to be. Well, that's been great fun. I've actually enjoyed that, so we'll do it again sometime. If you want to email me questions for the next one, I'll happily bring those up, and we're going to use that as the basis for the next session. My email address. So if anybody has questions that they'd like to be answered for the next time I do this, I'm not sure when that'll be, then fire an email across to me, and I'll happily put that as part of the chat for next time. And in the meantime, thank you all for your attendance. It's been great fun. What an enjoyable Sunday morning. I'm going to have a cup of tea now, perhaps some poached egg on toast. Lucky me. So I'll sign off for now. Thank you, and I'll speak to you all again soon.